Hello, today is December 3rd, and I want to continue on the last video that I made regarding the fact that gold and silver prices are inevitably going to rise multiples higher of their current prices today, which is 17.17 an ounce for gold and approximately $33 and 70 some cents for silver. So the theme I actually spoke of in the last video was that people always just parrot what they hear on the news. I still meet dozens of people today that will say gold is way too expensive and that silver isn't silver too expensive right now, which is ludicrous because most people are just parroting what they hear without actually using their brains and stopping to think for a second for themselves without falling victim to just internalizing something that they heard on the news or some talking head say on TV. So, recently I read a story that said people are becoming dumber. And they actually said because people do not think as much that they're becoming dumber. And I actually think that is true. Just like a lot of people in America are now not even overweight, but physically, they meet the physical definition of obesity, and that's like the majority of adults in the U.S. It's because we no longer have to hunt for our food like back in the caveman primitive time. So if we went back to prehistoric times and still had to hunt for our food, we can guarantee you that there were be just a very, very small percent of people that were not in tip-top shape. So it's almost like that movie Zombieland with Woody Harrelson, where one of the first rules, as the film opens up, is that the first people to go, if we had a zombie apocalypse, would be the out of shape and overweight people because they would not be able to run fast enough, and so the zombies would catch them. So, just like if you do not use your physical body and do not exercise, it will go to waste. I also actually believe if you do not use your brain, that your brain will waste, even though it's not as obvious and apparent as a physical change in your body when you don't exercise. If you don't exercise your brain, you will become dumber. I am 100% convinced of that. And here's the reason why. Because whenever people say that gold is too expensive, I can easily make them think about things that they've never thought about before, but that they accept. So I said, do you know that there is a gem out there that everybody accepts this price for, and everybody will pay? You're telling me gold is too expensive at $1,700 an ounce. You're saying silver is too expensive at $33 an ounce, 33 some change an ounce, and yet you will end up paying in your lifetime $2.5 to $6.5 million per ounce for this gem and think nothing is wrong with that. And people look at me and say, that's crazy, I would never do that. I said, you already either have or you will, because you don't use your brain and you won't think about this. And they say, what is that? I said, it's a diamond. And they'll say, well, diamonds aren't measured in ounces. I said, look, a carat is a form of weight, and a troy ounce, which gold and silver are measured in, is a form of weight. So if you convert, and you can convert carats into troy ounces, if you take the average price of a flawless 1 carat diamond across the world and convert that into troy ounces, you're paying about 2.4 to $6.5 million per troy ounce per diamond. And you think there's nothing wrong with that. So then that makes them pause to say, oh, well, maybe $1,700 an ounce isn't too expensive for gold, or maybe $33 isn't too expensive for silver. But then I can even take it further. I say, okay, you say that's too expensive. What is that based upon? Because price does not equal value. Maybe the value of gold is $8,000 to $10,000 an ounce, so it's still super cheap. And it was just phenomenally cheap when it was $250 an ounce. And then I'll say, well, they don't have an answer for that because they don't even understand what sets the price for gold and silver, so they can't answer that question. But then I said, hey, how about if I gave you a piece of red cloth? And on this piece of red cloth, I will tell you it's good. If I say, hypothetically speaking, I own a grocery store, I say you can come back and you can purchase food in my grocery store in exchange for services that you render to me. This is how I'm going to pay you. I'm going to give you just a piece of red cloth, and if you do $10 of work for me, I'll put a 10 on this piece of red cloth. But if you do 100, I'll put 100 on it, and that's worth 10 times more than the piece of cloth that says 10. And then I say, would you accept that as, legal barter? And they say, that's crazy because that's not legal. You could just come in and I could come in and try to use that, and you could just deny me like any goods and services for that. And who's to say that this piece of red cloth that has 100 should be worth 10 times more? It's just a piece of cloth that's worth nothing. And I say, exactly, because that's exactly what fiat currency is. Yet you accept this as legal payment for your work every single day, even though you say gold is too expensive and silver is too expensive. But yet, if you have $100 worth of gold, you certainly have 10 times more physical quantity than you would $10 worth of gold. But if you have $100 of euro or $100 of US dollars, 100 euros versus 10 euros, all you have is the same piece of paper, but just with a different number on it. It's not even a greater quantity. But then their objection would be, well, the red cloth you're giving me is not legal tender, but a euro is. So they say, that's a dumb argument. But I say, is it? But because what is that euro backed by? What is that US dollar backed by? It's backed by the full faith. Well, the US dollar is backed by full faith and credit of the U.S. government, but the euro is not even, because there is no central government in the EU, except for the European Central Bank, which kind of rules everything. But officially speaking, in the EU, there's not one central government. So it's not even, the euro is not even backed by the full faith and credit of any government. However, in the United States, if you're accepting the U.S. dollar, what does that mean? That means you just have a piece of worthless paper backed by nothing. Because the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, are you kidding me? It's in trillions of dollars of debt, has trillions of dollars of unfunded liabilities. So together, that's like saying, okay, I am going to back this piece of paper that you're accepting, you willingly accept every day, and you think this is money as payment for your work every day, and say basically if the U.S. government was a person, it would be the person with the worst credit rating history in the history of the entire world, because it'd be somebody that basically has zero assets and trillions of debt, and that's who you're going to basically put your faith in to pay you back. That this is actually worth something, and you are telling me gold and silver is too expensive. That is ludicrous. That just shows me you don't think whatsoever. So, basically, the whole point of this is that people don't think. And when I really, if I try to inject any type of logic into a conversation, then people will realize, oh, well, yeah, maybe I just did repeat something I heard parroted from some financial expert on TV, which is basically a bankster puppet, telling you that gold and silver are risky because they're volatile. Well, check it out. This is what I tell them. These people that told you gold and silver is too high, what were they saying 5-6 years ago? Why don't you go check their track record? They were saying the same thing 5 or 6 years ago, you dummy. And now you're still listening to them today, when they were wrong for 6, 7, 8, 10 years in a row. And so, there are people like me trying to educate everyone that have a track record that's been very long. So you can go check my blog, theundergroundinvestor.com. I've had a newsletter for over 6 years in which I've been saying things. Actually, I'll even post a link, if you're watching this on YouTube, to one of the articles I posted in September 2006. I said, don't listen to the banksters that are telling you gold is risky, because they were saying the same thing back then. And what was the average price of gold in September 2006? $573 an ounce. And now it's $1,700. What did I say? I said, don't listen to them. They're telling you that the gold bull market is over, that it's going to crash. I said they're all wrong in this article. I'll post it. below. I said, look, and I even wrote in that article 6 years ago, I said the volatility is going to get greater in precious metals. It's going to increase because of these fraudulent paper derivatives that they've invented. Now, what do you see today? Everyone said I was crazy 6 years ago for saying the GLD is likely fraudulent, that the price mechanism, setting mechanism for gold and silver in the paper derivatives market that banksters created is fraudulent and crazy. But now everyone's getting out of paper and everyone's going into physical gold. The same thing with silver. Everyone's getting out of the paper silver derivatives like the ETFs and the futures, and actually they want their hands on physical silver because they realize what I said 6 years ago is true. So you can check the track records, and I put my track record for the past 6-7 years in which I publicly have put this up on my blog and on my public newsletter, which is just a fraction of the information that I actually give my subscribing members. But you can still check it out there, even in generalities, like when I was saying in September 2006 that gold was going to soar multiples higher than it is right now, and that it, or back then in September 2006, I was saying that don't get fooled because gold is going to become more volatile, and that has actually happened as well. So, today I'm telling you again, and you can come back 2 years from now, you can come back in December of 2014, and you will see that gold and silver are multiples higher than their price, right now, which is going to happen again. Because if you understand why, which most people don't take the time to understand, they just parrot, oh, it's too high now, it's too expensive, because they don't understand value, they don't understand what's setting the price, they don't understand the manipulation schemes and price suppression schemes of the big bullion banks against gold and silver. So they don't understand that will go higher, because it was just as clear today, December 2012, that gold and silver are going to go multiples higher. I don't care if they push it down in the short term, if there's some short-term raid of the banksters against gold and silver for the next couple of weeks. If that happens, it does not matter. Still, you get all these puppets will tell you, try to scare you out of gold, scare you out of silver, but it's just as clear to me now that it's going to go much higher than the price is now, as it was back then 6 years ago, like I said. So you're welcome to come back in 2 years, and you will again see that I will be right. And I'm not like patting myself on the back here for past predictions, but I want people to understand this is the way you fight the banksters. This is a way that you could prevent them from bankrupting us in their anti-humanitarian causes, because price suppression of gold and silver is anti-humanitarian, because gold is inseparable from economic freedom, even as the biggest bankster of all said, Alan Greenspan, admitted gold is inseparable from economic freedom. If you don't understand that comment, go look up his essay and read it, because back when he wrote it, almost half a century ago, or maybe it was more than half a century ago, can't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but back then, he did tell the truth. And then you will understand why buying physical gold, physical silver is the way to fight back. So we need to stand up right now. We need to unify. We need to be defiant against these banksters' price suppression schemes. And this is the way we can win. And people are buying physical now. So this is why you see a lot of volatility, but you kind of see a floor right now underneath gold and silver prices, is because people are fighting back. So this is the time. We need not to fear the banksters, but we need to unite. Go out there, buy an ounce of physical gold, buy an ounce of physical silver. Go out and fight, and we can win this battle. Thanks for watching. Take care.